So there's a statistic that I heard that only 10% of Etsy sellers are making 90% of all of the revenue that goes through Etsy.com. United States as a whole, it's also true that 90% of small businesses and startups fail within the first 5 years. In this video, I'm gonna go over specifically why Etsy sellers fail, and some of these are true to all business models, and some of them are actually true specifically for Etsy. And hopefully watching this video, you see kind of what you're up against and some of the things that you're gonna have to do to combat, basically giving up. Because the only reason anyone fails in any business is giving up. Welcome back, guys. My name is Gardner. If you're new to the channel, I talk about building brands mainly on Etsy and Shopify, but I talk a lot about other entrepreneurial stuff as well. I've sold over $2 million between my e-commerce brands since I started in 2019, and I've been documenting that journey here on this channel, just giving back every single thing that I've learned along the way. If that is something that you're interested in, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. This all comes from just collecting data, having thousands of interactions at this point with people in my comment section, conversations I've had in my Instagram DMs, or even in my consulting groups, like when I do one-on-one store audits, or even people that are in my all-in masterclass. These are really the pain points that I see that cause people to just give up. Similarly to the stock market, the only time you actually lose is when you pull out. People put in hundreds of hours into their Etsy account and they don't immediately start seeing that gratification of sales or profit or whatever the case is, and they pull out. All of a sudden, you just lost all of that money, time, and energy that you just invested in that business, instead of seeing it through until you actually start seeing and producing the results that you want. I just want to set the ground running right from the beginning. I would argue like 80% of building an Etsy business, an e-commerce business, any type of business is like 80% mental and 20% actually doing the thing. I have a fundamental belief that I can teach myself anything, and I've proven that to myself time and time again. I've taught myself product photography, I've taught myself design, I've taught myself copywriting, I understand funnels, media buying on Google, TikTok, Instagram. I'm not saying I'm the best at all of those things, but I have put in the time and energy to learn what I need to learn, the knowledge that I have. And all of that came with trial and error and trial and error. So the first reason why most Etsy sellers fail is because they pull out too early and they don't educate themselves or learn what they need to learn to see their brand through to get the results that they actually want. Business is a marathon, it is not a sprint. The people that are tenacious enough to stay in it long enough, or to get in the room with the right mentors, to get the knowledge that they want, to have patience when things don't work out, and look at their little failures or their little losses, not so much as failures, but as just checking that box off of okay, well, I tried that, what's the next thing that I'm gonna try? Being an entrepreneur, you are the ultimate problem solver. It's not like 5 p.m. hits and then you can just clock out. When you own a business, it's your baby. You're thinking about it constantly, especially in the beginning, in those crucial few months, maybe even years. Important that you're constantly educating yourself and constantly trying to tweak the dials of your business to understand what's going on, what's working and what's not working. More specifically, the second reason why most Etsy sellers fail, and then by default they end up quitting, is they don't put in enough time and energy to understand who their customer avatar is, who the dream customer is. So maybe their branding, their value propositions, the quality isn't what the dream customer avatar expects. And you kind of have this brand that you're building, but it's not really clicking or syncing with your customer avatar. Or you didn't even define who that dream customer avatar is. So you're just kind of throwing out products out there and not really building a real brand or a brand vibe or brand messaging, targeting one specific person in the beginning. I like to give the analogy of Facebook. If you asked today, like, who uses Facebook, you would be like, oh, my grandma uses Facebook, my mom uses Facebook, everybody uses Facebook, right? But when Facebook first started, it was specifically targeting elite college students, so Ivy League college students. That's a really specific customer avatar a really, really specific type of person. And the solution that it was solving for those people was the social aspect of college universities. What was really, really good at is that they built demand, honed in on a specific customer avatar, got that proof of concept, and then grew from there. I also like to make the statement like, you know, your products can be curing cancer, but if you don't have reviews, if you don't have testimonial, if you don't have social proof, it doesn't matter. So it's really important that when you first launch your brand, you're picking a specific vehicle, a customer avatar to be speaking to that they can hone in on and resonate with off the bat to really create those first 100, 200, maybe even 1,000 loyal clients, sales, followers, whatever the case may be. Just to recap on that, some of the faults that I see is the branding isn't speaking to the customer avatar, putting the right time and energy in building an aesthetic brand that makes sense to the customer. Maybe your value propositions aren't sexy enough in comparison to your competition, so you're not doing the proper product research, meaning when you're launching your products in the Etsy search pages, people are just not even gonna click on your listing because the value proposition isn't competitive enough for your competition, meaning what you're offering versus what they're paying isn't perceived as a higher value as your competitors. Your messaging, your actual copywriting is off where it's not resonating correctly. Or even maybe your quality of your products isn't competitive enough, like you don't have features or variation options that your competition has. Next reason why a lot of Etsy sellers fail is because they don't test enough products. So when you're first launching your Etsy store, it's very much a horizontal scale. So once you max out your Etsy ad budget, which usually is around $1,000, that Etsy even allows you to spend. I've never seen an account be more than $1,000, which is your goal to get to that $1,000 spending. But once you max out that budget, there's no other way for you to get more sales other than just launching more products or doing external traffic on TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. In which case, I wouldn't even recommend you drive that traffic to an Etsy store. I would say drive it, if you are on that scale, I would say drive it to a Shopify store so you don't have to pay that 6.5% fee. But the point is, it's very much a horizontal scale. Remember, you're competing against stores that have hundreds of reviews, that have social proof, that have their products indexed already in the Etsy search pages. So when you're first coming into the game and you only have 10 or 15 listings, that's not a really big data sample for you to start collecting data on what's working and what's not working. And so one way to combat that is by duplicating your listing, and no, not just duplicating the same listing 15 times and then running some ads on it, but actually duplicating your listings and changing the main image, or maybe changing the variation options, or maybe changing, you know, what price point is displayed on the front end, or doing some keyword research and finding different keywords to put in the beginning of your title tags and descriptions. There's a lot of ways that maybe if you only have 15 products that you can test them 3 or 4 or even 5 times. The next one is having unrealistic expectations. So this is really talking about people that are trying to get into Etsy for the first time. And then the next couple of reasons why Etsy stores fail are gonna be more targeted to more seasoned sellers or sellers that have already been making sales and currently are running shops, but their shops are on a decline. So let's just talk about the unrealistic expectations for newer sellers. For whatever reason, probably because of social media and stuff, like you come into this game thinking it's gonna be get rich quick, it's gonna be fast, it's gonna be easy, it doesn't require hundreds of hours of work. That's just not what it is. So even if you're a print-on-demand seller or you're someone selling a digital ad set where you don't really have high monetary risk, there's a lot of time risk, I guess, if you want to call time a risk. I feel like because of those, you know, frenzies that are going on and everyone wants to learn print on demand, everyone wants to learn how to sell digital assets, there's low barrier of entry because there's low monetary risk to get started. They don't realize that you still have to spend money, and you have to spend money on paid traffic, especially when the competition's high. That means that you actually need to even spend more money to rank your products and outbid your competition against the people that are already having thousands of reviews. In order to basically outrank those people, you need to be building even more competitive products with better value propositions. You need to be showing Etsy that you're willing to outspend them in your Etsy ad. So if their budget's set to $1,000 a day, you need to get to $1,000 a day spend as fast as possible. And that costs money. And that may mean that you may be negative for months and months and months until you actually start seeing a profit to build a competitive store. And so most people that think that this is free and it's fast, That's just not the case. And what that tends to lead to is people, again, they don't see the results right away. They don't get that, instant gratification or drops of dopamine that they're making a bunch of money, and they quit. It's an Etsy, but in any business model, it's really important that you stay in it until you actually clear a profit and get a proof of concept for yourself. Because if you really want to, even if you're in the most competitive niche, if you really want to be the top store doing something, even though you're going against a store that has 80,000 reviews, you can do it. I can think of 7 different ways that you could do it. It's gonna cost you time and it's gonna cost you a lot of money, but it's possible. It's 100% possible. It's true for Amazon sellers. This is true for eBay sellers. This is true for Shopify sellers. It's just, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to risk in order to get there? Higher risk, higher reward. Now the next thing that I see a lot of older sellers that got in really early, or maybe even sellers that just they had a year or 2 years where they've been riding this wave where they really like the sales that were coming in, but then for some reason they're seeing their sales decline. So let's talk about the seasoned sellers, the older sellers that got in years ago, back in 2014. I don't even know when Etsy started open, like the OG sellers. So what I've seen with these older sellers, one, they got in really early. So they built a business. So if your business is this pie chart, right? And your pie chart has a bunch of different slices. You got net profit, you got your product costs, you have employees, you have shipping costs, merchant fees, seller fees, and then you have marketing costs. With these older sellers, what happened for not all of them, but some of them, they didn't have to spend money on marketing. Why? Because they were the first person that were selling scrunchies. So they were already ranking #1, page 1 for the keyword scrunchie. So when thousands of people started searching scrunchie, they were the first one to show up. So they virtually were making all these sales without having to spend money on marketing. Now, what happens as time progresses, competition arises. This is true for every platform. Sales start to decline. But the problem with these older sellers, because in the beginning they didn't understand marketing or the value of marketing, or that this was even gonna happen, that piece of the pie that they have that we just drew, they actually no room left in that pie for a marketing cost percentage. And so now all of a sudden, to be competitive, to hold those ranks, because now people are outbidding them and stealing those positions. Now, because of that, they don't have room in their sale price to pay for marketing. The business structure that they have built is faulty, basically. And in order to regain momentum and really re-rank their products, they have to restructure these pieces of the pie inside of their business model. So this is really unfortunate, and it's really hard to give consults to these types of sellers because I can spot it almost immediately. It's really hard to tell somebody hey, you basically have to change your entire business structure for this to make sense for you anymore. It's really important that you're building that piece of your pie chart in your business so you can leave a large amount of space there for marketing, especially in the beginning, because in the beginning, honestly, breaking even or even going negative but still making sales is winning, because at least you're getting a proof of concept that people actually even want what you have to sell. Now, for the other sellers that maybe do have their budgets maxed out on their ad spend and they have been making consistent sales, but what they're seeing is that their sales are dropping, or their cost to acquire a customer is becoming more expensive, meaning their ad cost is becoming more expensive. And this type of seller, it's good that they are spending money on marketing, but the issue is with this type of seller is kind of like the OG sellers. They kind of started making these sales and thought that the ship that they were sailing is never going to sink. So they get complacent and they kind of take their foot off the gas pedal on new product designs, finding new trends, keyword research, looking for opportunities, increasing their value propositions, increasing their product features, all of that stuff. Meanwhile, you have competitors popping up all over the place. So instead of doubling down and continuing to do product launches, because remember, Etsy is a horizontal scale, they kind of just are oh, I'm happy with the sales coming in, so they don't do new product development and new product research and just kind of think they're untouchable. Comfortable is probably one of the biggest things that a lot of why businesses fail. So it's really important that your R&D, research and development, is a continuous SOP process, a weekly process that you have inside your business. Because success with your listings don't last forever. As competition's arising, Two, trends are changing, search terms are changing. All of those things are subject to change. For instance, I had a listing that at one point, my best-selling listing was at like 18x ROAS, return on ad spend. But over time, as competitors arise, as trends change, you see the ROAS go down. And I think it ended up going down to like 4x from like 18x when I first started. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your business. That's just the normal life cycle of listings. And the only way to combat that is by constantly updating, creating, making new listings, designs, value propositions, and new products. That's part of this Etsy process. Remember, the only failing is giving up. As cliche as that sounds, it really is. This game is so much more mental than actually physical. And the people that are the most tenacious and the most creative with learning what they need to learn to get where they need to get are the ones that really crush it. And everybody can do it. Every single person can do it. I hope you got some value out of this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.